All right. How about now? Mhm.
Morning, everyone. Just we'll give another minute or two, make sure everybody's in that's going to join us, and we'll get underway here. Chuck, when you're ready, when you appear back, we'll get started. I think Chuck went to get another cup of coffee. So get started in a moment, folks.
It's still early. Coffee is necessary. Maybe one thing just to remind everybody, if you aren't already signed up for our in-person event at the Painted Stave in Smyrna on Friday night, so it'll be 5:30 to 8:30. Tickets are still available online on our website, and we can share the link in the chat as well. But tickets are $20 for members, 25 for non-members. It includes drinks and food. We're going to have a couple of speakers, and if you haven't been to this Painted Stave before, really hope you'll join us. It's an awesome venue, local Delaware distillery, and they're housed in the former Smyrna Theater, so it's a historic building too. So it should be a good time. So hopefully, like I said, if you haven't already signed up, hope you'll go to our website and consider registering.
And Mike Rasmussen, one of the co-owners and distillers, is going to give us an overview of how they adaptively reused and rehabbed the building. So that'll be fun. So please join us if you can tomorrow night. It's good to be back together again.
I know it's strange after I feel like these past couple of years, finally having some kind of in-person portion
It
has been
still
great.
doesn't quite feel like normal yet to me in a way.
Definitely, yeah.
Yeah. All right, everyone. I apologize. We've lost Chuck for the moment. He was here, but we'll get him back, I'm sure. And okay. He accidentally got kicked out, but his screen is still on.
Oh, I think D out of his actual office.
Oh, okay. Jeez.
So let's see. So maybe one thing we can do, and again, I hope it's one Zoom link for the whole day today of virtual sessions, and then we've got sessions tomorrow, Friday morning. But maybe one thing we can do is just run through really quick what some of the upcoming sessions are. I know everybody's busy, so you might have to pop in and out, but hopefully y'all can join us for as many sessions as possible. I know coming up next, we're going to have Kara Smith, who's our moderator for this session. She'll be moderating the next session as well. It's a session on historic house rehab, Mauchline. So we'll have the owners of Mauchline on with us to kind of talk about their process and tell us a little bit about what it's been like to rehab a historic home. I have not been there yet, but I know a couple of folks have. I know Kara has been working with them, and I think actually some of our presenters for tomorrow who work for the Center of Historic Architecture and Design have also worked with them a bit and are familiar with Mauchline. But it seems like a pretty cool property, so I'm excited. I'm excited to hear a little bit more about that. And then I think what we've got after Mauchline, let me just check our schedule here. After Mauchline at noon, so we'll have a little bit of a break. So the Mauchline presentation will be from 10:15 to 11:15. We'll have about a 45-minute break for lunch. And then at noon, we're going to have one of our board members, Dr. Abdullah Muhammad, moderating a discussion with some former students of the State College for Colored Students of Delaware, so graduates of that school. We've got Dr. Reba Ross Holly.
Can you all hear me? If
Yes.
There we go. Okay. For some reason, Alex's audio went out, but all the details for today and tomorrow, our sessions are on the Preservation Delaware website, which is preservationde.org. And there's a tab specifically for this year's conference. If you want to check out, the schedule for today and tomorrow, and all the bios of all the speakers are on there as well. As well as the Zoom link, so if you get locked out or don't know where to go, the Zoom link is on there as well. So check that out, or keep that handy. Keep that window open if you want to check out the schedule over the next 2 days. And our apologies to you all. We'll get this situated. I think Chuck definitely needs more coffee, I think. He got locked out of his office, so just waiting for him to find a way back in. I put a plug in for Preservation Delaware. If anyone's interested in getting more involved, we have several different committees. This conference and other programs and workshops we put on, webinars. We have a series of webinars we've been putting on, not quite monthly, but periodically throughout the year. These are all organized by our Fearless Education Committee, headed by Alex Tarantino, who you heard a few minutes ago. So that's a popular committee, and we welcome more members if anyone's interested in getting involved in that. I think they try to meet monthly and certainly put together this annual conference and things in between. So that's one option if folks are interested in getting more involved in our work. And we have several other committees as well. And our advocacy and policy committee is one that we are trying to get more active to seek more funding for preservation from the state, and you know, possibly support any policy changes that might help strengthen incentives and or policies that support preservation throughout the state. And then we have a finance committee and other committees. So reach out to us, let us know if you're interested in getting more involved. We'd love to have more active members. For those of you just joining us, we're having a little bit of a technical issue, and just waiting for that to get ironed out. Hopefully we'll be underway soon. There we go. Chuck has found the magic door in the middle of the bridge. It's like station 9 3/4 on the bridge.
I'm sorry, guys.
No, you're good.
That was insane.
All right. Well,
right.
In the interest of time, I'll just welcome everyone again real quick. My name is Dee Durham. I'm the current president of Preservation Delaware, and welcome you all this morning. Apologize for our technical problems. I'm going to turn things over to this session's moderator, Kara Smith, and Kara is a current Preservation Delaware board member, and we'll get underway with this first session.
Thanks, Dee, and thanks everybody for joining. I'll try to get through our housekeeping stuff pretty quickly here. First, thanks to our 2023 conference sponsors. You're all listed on the website. We appreciate your support. Just a reminder, all of the attendees are muted. If you have any questions, please post them in the Q&A function in Zoom, and we'll review them at the end of the presentation. Just a reminder, this is being recorded and will be available on the Preservation Delaware's YouTube account after the conference. I'm excited to introduce our first speaker here, Chuck Ryan, who is here to discuss his firm's adaptive use project at Ursuline Academy. Mr. Ryan began his architectural career with the Wilmington firm of Homsey architects, starting as a drafter in 1979 and ultimately ending up as the firm's managing partner. In 2021, Homsey Architects merged with another local architectural firm, Tevebaugh Architecture, where the Homsey studio at Tevebaugh Architecture was formed. Mr. Ryan's interests in and background are demonstrated by his work in the fields of historic preservation, educational, institutional, and corporate design. Notable preservation projects on which Mr. Ryan has participated or led include the restoration of the Ship's Tavern District, Walker's Mill, Gibraltar, Mount Cuba, Georgetown's Brick Hotel, the Queen Theater, Westchester's Nauer Performing Arts Center, and of course, Ursuline Academy's Student Life Center, which he is here to talk about today. So thank you once again, Chuck, for being here and sharing this exciting project with us. Please take it away when you're ready.
Okay, thank you. My apologies to all for my technical difficulty getting started here. I guess what happens when you work in a new office, relatively new office. Welcome everybody. Thank you for attending. I'm here to talk about a historic rehabilitation and adaptive reuse of the former convent at Ursuline Academy. And the agenda for this presentation is to talk about the history of the buildings and the campus, the tax credit program eligibility, a preservation and design approach for the project that was taken, and then the tax credit program process in terms of what things need to be filled out and how and submitted to whom. So first, just in terms of the team of people that were involved in this project, Ursuline Academy, Kathy Field Lloyd, the president, at the very beginning of this project, sort of got the ball rolling. And Tricia Medeiros joined as president after Kathy retired a few years later, and continues to be the president at Ursuline Academy. Marie Ferrier was the director of facilities at the time. She's since retired. Alana Pizer, who is a member of the Buildings and Grounds Committee at Ursuline. Myself as a trustee at the time. I'm no longer a trustee at Ursuline Academy, but I was during this process. And that was my involvement in this project. This was not a Homsey Architects project or a Tevebaugh architecture project. It was a Chuck Ryan project volunteering for Ursuline Academy. The design and construction team included Carl Creenan at ABHA Architects. Jerry Darty at EDIS carried the preliminary pre-construction work, and then Andrew DeSabatino was the project manager through that process. The Division of Historic and Cultural Affairs, I consider them a team member in these processes. Tim Slavin, Joan Larrabee, and Kara Briggs were very good to work with, very helpful, and are an incredible resource to have during this process, this kind of a process. So Ursuline Academy came to Wilmington in 1893 at the request of the Bishop of the Diocese of Wilmington, and located a temporary school at the corner of Delaware Avenue and Harrison Street. So on the screen, you'll see the Cool Springs Park area with the rectangle around it. That's a closer in view, zoomed in view of the Ursuline site that you'll see in a minute. The red circle above is the intersection of Delaware Avenue and Harrison Streets, where the Ursulines started their work here in Wilmington in 1893. 1895, they opened a kindergarten at that site. In the early 1920s, the Ursuline programs were expanding. They were looking for more property to be able to expand those programs. And John J. Raskob actually purchased a piece of the property that's on the site that you see right now in front of you, that is shaded in a pale red. He purchased the property from the owners and then donated it to the Ursuline Sisters. That happened in the early 20s. In 1922, a dormitory and convent was designed by Paul Monahan of Philadelphia. And then an addition was built to it, to an existing estate that was on the site. So you'll see in some of the later photographs what portion of the building was the original estate and what was added by Paul Monahan. There was renovations, and a large addition was completed in 1924, built by Joyce Kerrigan and Ernest DeSabatino and Sons. Hence, Ernest DeSabatino is now EDIS. They came back to do the renovation for this former convent building. So on this photograph here, this Google Earth photograph, you'll see the Ursuline site in the pale red. The heavy rectangle in the center is the former Convent and the now new Student Life Center, relatively new Student Life Center. To the left of that is the middle and upper school with the gymnasium. To the right of that rectangle is the lower school. The property at Ursuline is bounded by Franklin Street on the left or to the west, Pennsylvania Avenue to the north, and Van Buren Street to the east. The property extends out to Van Buren at two locations, one at the lower school playground, and then one at what Ursuline's been calling their Performing Arts Center, which has a direct main entrance off of Van Buren Street. So the upper school was built in 1927. The building to the left on the former map. Lower school was a 1955 era building. Montessori program was added to Ursuline's offerings in 1964. The gymnasium and middle school additions were done in the 1980s. The PAC, the Performing Arts Center building, is a 1914 former Christian Science church that Ursuline Academy bought probably 25 to 30 years ago. They're in the process of figuring out what they need to do with that, what they can do with that. The Student Life Center itself is a 3-story, 8-bay stucco over brick Tudor building with gabled structured roofs, wood casement windows with brick detailing around them. The west side of the building that you see to the right of the tree here was a chapel on the first floor, which has been turned into a library as part of this renovation and restoration, with stylized Gothic cast stone detailing as an accent for that space. These are some of the photographs that were included in our Part 1 application to the State Historic Preservation Office. You can see some of the existing details that were at the building. Some of the conditions of the exterior walls, the stucco had been taking a beating over time, and all that was repaired as part of these alterations and renovations. A couple of other photos. The photo on the upper left is a passage that runs along the front of the building. That was a key element of the design of the building that was important to keep from a State Historic Preservation Office point of view. A couple other details. The Gothic window there is one of the windows into the former chapel and current library, and just a nice little scupper detail that I thought was kind of fun. The bell tower. They had this interesting detailing at the intersection of the gable end with the vertical wall, with this almost shale looking brick material. It's a very unusual detail and creates a lot of character. Detail of the chimney above. Some of the interior spaces that were important to maintain. The picture on the upper left is the chapel as it was then. The staircases, there were 2 existing staircases in the building that were identified early on as important features to keep. So those stairs were restored exactly as you see them here, except that they were enclosed by partitions to create the 1 to 2 hour rating necessary for the fire rating. So tax credit program eligibility is actually fairly simple. In Delaware is, and I don't think this exists in every state in the union, but Delaware is one of the states that offers a tax credit program for nonprofits. The standard for-profit tax credit program includes a 20% tax credit locally at the state level and a 20% tax credit at the federal level. The federal tax credit program does not, at least the last I checked, does not allow participation from nonprofit organizations. I think that's one of the reasons the state has offered this slightly more advantageous 30% tax credit for nonprofits within the state. So there are two considerations when determining whether or not your building is even eligible to be considered for the tax credit program. The first is that it would be listed, the building itself would be listed in the National Register of Historic Places. The second, and the one that applied to the Ursuline property, is that the building under consideration contributes to the historic district listed, to a historic district listed on the National Register. So this Ursuline site is in the Cool Springs Park Historic District, which was listed in the National Register in August of 2007. That was a boundary increase of an earlier listing, I think from 1983 or 85. And fortunately for Ursuline, that boundary increase included their property. So in addition to it being in a historic district, the key word in that second paragraph there is contributing. So it has to be a contributing building to the importance of the historic district. And fortunately, again, for Ursuline, every one of the buildings on their property are listed as contributing buildings. So each one of the properties within Ursuline, although they're not listed individually in the National Register, the fact that they're contributing buildings allows them to participate in the state tax credit program. Preservation design and approach. So I think I'm going to duck out of the presentation view for a minute so I can scroll around on these drawings. I'll jump back in when I need to. So these are the drawings prepared by ABHA architects for the project. They were the architects hired by Ursuline Academy to perform the services on the renovations and additions. This plan here is a demolition plan. You can see the building interior was pretty much gutted for the most part, with the exception of a few important pieces. So the chapel is over here to the right, which was an important piece. The corridor that connects the building in an east and west direction was another important feature of the building that needed to be maintained. The two stair towers, one is located here, the other one is located next to the chapel. What's labeled here is art rooms, were art rooms used by Ursuline Academy at the time. So essentially everything from this vestibule here to the left of the sheet, with the exception of the band music room, which was a 1980s addition. That portion of the building, along with a porch that projected off to the east of the existing exterior wall, was the original house that sat on this property when John Raskob bought it and donated it to the Ursuline sisters. You see there are several areas of somewhat major demolition. So there are later additions to the original building. The band music room was probably the latest of those additions. Because of its size and location, it was decided to leave that in place. There was a small residence building, apartment building, if you will, to the south of the building that was demolished. And then an existing art room and a sacristy that serviced the chapel were also later additions that were demolished as part of this renovation project. And you'll see a little bit later why those demolition, why that demolition was proposed and accepted by the SHPO. Not sure why it's not advancing. Hold on 1 second. I don't know why it's not advancing now. Technical difficulties abound. There you go. So the next sheet of drawings from ABHA shows demolition on the second and third floor plans. And again, essentially the interior partitions were demolished almost in their entirety. The program for the Student Life Center included classrooms and music rooms, and the small individual bedrooms or apartment units for each of the Ursuline sisters. We just couldn't reuse them in any way. So there was a fairly wholesale demolition of the interior partitions. The exterior of the building stayed intact as it was, except for those 2 areas of demolition that I talked about earlier. For new construction, so this plan at the top of the sheet here shows the proposed new construction. There were 2 major additions made to the building. One to the southeast, which is this kitchen and servery addition, in addition to a small addition that's identified as the dining room A. So this whole area here was new construction, or is new construction. The second area of new construction is the space that is identified as atrium. So this chunk of the building here, where we demolished an art room to make way for this atrium space, which is just a communal space for the students to come and study, socialize, meet, just about any activity, and just about any time during the day there are students in there and in and out. So the main entrance for the building was maintained as it had been. Walking into a reception area, welcome center, the school store, the atrium straight ahead. To the left is the dining room. So the program included consolidating the cafeteria functions throughout the campus and the library functions for the upper school. And this plan reflects that design. So there are conference rooms, there's a library, there's a cafeteria, there are classrooms throughout the building to support the Ursuline Academy programming. The upper floors, you see the administration offices, which used to be across the street, across Franklin Street. Ursuline decided to move those operations back on the main campus rather than being separate from the rest of the campus. So the third floor is primarily over the main body of the building, the administration of the school. You'll see to the right, above the former chapel and new library, are some additional classroom spaces. Same thing happens with the second floor plan. There's an art room, or 2 art rooms above the chapel, directly above the chapel, and some classrooms, band, choral, and dance functions happen there. They also needed to insert some new toilet rooms to meet current code. Let me back up one, because it is important to note the stair tower to the west remains. It's just enclosed now. Stair tower to the east remains. Again, it's just enclosed for fire separation. The corridor between the stair and the other entrance remains in this new design as it was identified as a key element of the building floor plan. So this is a photograph of the Student Life Center as it stands today. And really from this vantage point, it looks essentially as it did before construction started, other than the repairs that were made. There are some other photos around the building. So this is from the Cool Spring Park, the Reservoir Park, looking towards the northwest. So that large volume in front of you is the kitchen addition. And directly adjacent to that is the band room up on the second floor and a dining hall on the first floor. From the west looking northeast, you see the chapel structure is the gable end structure closest to you. And this shows you the infill of the atrium space for that addition. All of the, with the exception of a few windows, all of the existing windows were replaced in kind with new wood casement windows to match what was originally in the building. The exterior of the building was restored completely, stucco repaired, cracks filled, new elastomeric coatings over the existing stucco to give it some stability. So this is an interior shot of the new library at the Student Life Center. And essentially this space did not change sans the elimination of the pews and an altar. So the center of the space was maintained as open for good reason. The balcony, the choir loft that you see towards the back of the photo remains, had a very low rail, so you'll see a glass rail that peeks up behind it to make it a little bit safer from a fall point of view. The only disappointing thing about this was the lighting itself. There was some very nice decorative lighting that was part of the original chapel that would have been nice to be able to reuse. However, the engineers told us they weren't able to get enough light output out of those fixtures by themselves. So ABHA chose a contemporary fixture so as not to confuse anybody about what was there and what was new. The confessionals, you saw a photo in one of the earlier slides. There were two confessionals on either side of the main entrance into the chapel. You see the pair of doors at the end of the photo. Those are the doors with the Gothic stone detailing around them. Since we didn't need the confessionals anymore, Ursuline decided to replace those with two small meeting rooms. So there's meeting rooms there available for students and Ursuline employees, teachers, staff to be able to use for small conferences. There's a little bit of a closer shot of that. This is a photo of the atrium space and odd furniture placed in a spot where these students are gathering. And just about any time I've been into the building, you see this number of students in the space in between class or other functions studying. It's a fairly well populated space at all times during the day. From that atrium space, looking back towards the main entrance to the building, that main entrance hall You see the school store to your right. And if you look past this opening directly in front of you, you can see a reception desk to the right as well. Cafeteria was a completely new construction, and centralized that cafeteria function for the entire campus, which was a huge advantage to Ursuline. This is the corridor in between the two stair towers that was identified as an important element, which we maintained and restored. There were some offices off of this corridor to the left. There's a new small chapel to the left, and some other spaces off of that corridor. So the tax credit program process, this is a PDF from the Historic Preservation Tax Credit Historic Office. It's available on their website. It's a pretty handy little piece of information. It provides information on applicable information on both the state credit and the federal tax credit program. I'm focusing on the state credit program. So one of the, and I won't go through every one of these, but several of them have applicable discussion points for the Ursuline project and other nonprofit organizations. So they're asking the second item. So everything, the boxes highlighted in blue are what I'm talking about at the time. So the question is, are the tax credits transferable? And they are. So the idea being for nonprofit agencies, having a tax credit doesn't benefit a nonprofit because they don't pay taxes. Hence the nonprofit status. But what you can do is you can sell those tax credits to entities that do have a use for those tax credits on a state level. This is just a box that tells you about the difference between the for-profit and nonprofit organizations and the percentage of the credit that's offered based on that status. The expenditures that qualify for a credit, it's amazing. It's almost everything you spend on a renovation project. Even the two additions that were made to the Ursuline Student Life Center, because they did not exceed that 20% of the footprint of the original building, the cost for those two additions also qualify for the tax credit. Site work can, with another series of qualifications, which there wasn't a lot of site work associated with this phase of the Student Life Center renovation project. So all of those were included as well. Some other expenditures that don't apply to the credit: furnishings, window treatments, appliances. The program is capped at $8 million per year. And when you get in line for a tax credit application is critical in terms of whether or not you'll be able to participate in that particular fiscal year, or you'll have to wait to the next fiscal year funding cycle. This is an important one. The current, I hadn't realized this or remembered it, but the current authorization, which I thought was a 10-year authorization for this program, runs through fiscal year 2024, which is now. So in July, on July 1st of next year, either the legislature has to reauthorize the program to continue for another period of time, or it just disappears. So I just put a plea out there to everyone participating today to reach out to your legislators to express support for this tax credit program, because it is a hugely successful and important program for preservation work here in Delaware. We talked about the qualification part already. I'll talk a little bit about the application process and the 4 parts of the application process. And of course, all of this needs to follow the Secretary of the Interior standards for rehabilitation, which is the standard that the State Historic Preservation Office has adopted. So the tax credit program process, the website you see there is the State Historic Preservation Office website, or Historical and Cultural Affairs website. It's a very well-designed website, easy to use, lots of information on it. If you have any questions about what may or may not apply, that website is where I start every time I start a preservation project. Certification of the historic property is the part 1 application of the process, and essentially it's just documenting proof that the building is what it's representing, and it's a historic property within a listed historic district. Certificate of rehabilitation is that application that they call the part 2, which is done when the construction documents for the project are nearly at 80 or 90% complete at a minimum, and submitted to the State Historic Preservation Office for review and approval or comment. Certificate of completion is essentially what it sounds like. When the building construction is completed, you submit a part 3 application to verify that the costs are where they were projected originally, and that the renovations were done according to the approved plans. And the request for credit award is the last part of the process, where you actually submit a request for the credit application. I think that's it. I'm sorry, I've been a little bit brief because I was trying to catch up. Hopefully we've got a few minutes for a few questions and answers.
We do. Thank you so much. And I don't think that felt rushed. I think we got a lot of information there. We have a couple of questions coming in as we're discussing these. If you have a question, please enter it into the Q&A. Chuck, you want to take a couple questions?
Sure.
Okay. So Jean has asked, the kitchen addition appears to have no period details that echo the rest of the building. Can you discuss on why that is?
Yeah, so I mean, the Secretary of the Interior standards, let me get back to that elevation. So I mean, it does have a brick water table, which does tie into the existing brick water table that's around the existing building, but that's it. So the rest of the building is designed as a clear contemporary addition to the original historic piece of property. And that is to follow the Secretary of Interior standards for additions and how they're supposed to appear relative to the design of the existing, the detailing of the existing structure.
Yep. Okay. Our next question here. What part of this project are you most proud of when it comes to retaining historic architecture for new uses? And alternately, what is the saddest loss of original features here? And were those well documented before they were demoed? So maybe.
Yeah, so the thing I'm mostly happy with is the library. The loss of the chapel for the Ursuline sisters was a difficult one to come to terms with for them, for obvious reasons. It had been their chapel for daily worship and prayer for lots of years. And they lived in this building, so the chapel was a daily event for them. But obviously, the chapel wasn't big enough to support more than a couple of classrooms of Ursuline students. The only time it had been used in recent years by the school was for pre-game prayer sessions and that sort of thing. And the library in the upper school was essentially in the basement of the auditorium space, which from my point of view was the worst place ever for a library. I think this space gives the library its due relative to its importance in an educational institution. And you know, the sisters did ultimately come around to understanding that it was a good adaptive reuse for that space. And it's hugely successful and well used by the students. So most of the interior demolition that was done, the detailing around that was nice, but not on the high side of it. Wasn't the kind of detailing that you're seeing here in the former chapel. So we did lose some of the you know, the base moldings and the casings around doors. We reused a lot of that trim where we could. The thing that we lost that was a mistake were some plaster crown moldings and medallions that were in the two parlors, the parlor and a entry of the original estate that was on the site before it was donated to the sisters. Those moldings were supposed to be retained, but somehow the demolition contractor had it in his mind that it all needed to come out for access to the ceiling space above the plaster ceiling. So that was a piece that we lost that we shouldn't have. So that's probably the most disappointing part of the project.
Sorry to hear that. I'm sure you took plenty of photographs, I hope.
We did. Yes, we did.
Good.
And a lot of conversations with the SHPO.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This next question, I'm going to combine a couple because that are related here to try to summarize here. But are the tax credits sold dollar for dollar? And was Ursuline able to sell those credits to offset the construction costs? And
yes.
How might they sell them?
So the total cost of this project was just north of $11 million. And so and most of that cost was attributable or to the tax credit program. So 30% of that was a fair chunk of money, and is why it's so important to continue this program. And I see Alex posted a chat to say that it's already been authorized till 2030, so that's all good news.
Yep.
Hopefully they can update on that on their website soon.
Yep.
So Ursuline worked with an organization called Stair, who specializes in a number of financing things, but one of the things they do is help nonprofits sell their tax credits. So Stair, with their relationships, put Ursuline in touch with Discover Bank, and Discover Bank bought all of their tax credits. And I don't remember the exact number, but it was slightly north of 90 cents on the dollar. So ultimately, the tax credit program helped fund this renovation and these additions to the tune of $2.75 million, which is a pretty substantial percentage based on the total construction cost.
That's fantastic. I think you're answering this next question then. So Stair was your advisor to help you navigate through the tax credit process?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Um,
And you know, obviously a very crucial part of the team. I don't know that any of us at Ursuline would have known who to reach out to, you know, a bank to reach out to buy the tax credits, but apparently there's a fairly robust market for buying tax credits by for-profit organizations.
yeah, do you have any other recommendations for nonprofits when embarking on that process?
Scenair is the only one that I've worked with personally. All of the other tax credit program projects I've worked on in my career have been with for-profit organizations. So they made use of those tax credits themselves. But Scenair was a good organization to work with.
Great. And just I think our last question here is just asking about the quantity of new construction versus what was preserved in this project. It does look like a lot of new construction. Can you maybe talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so I mean, we were careful about, and not that we wouldn't have built the square footage that was needed, but the additional square footage to the existing footprint did not exceed 20% of the total floor area of the existing building. So it was a, you know, it's a three-story building with a full basement. There's a lot of square footage in this building prior to the additions, which enabled Ursuline to add the atrium space, as well as the cafeteria and kitchen, full service commercial kitchen, which was crucial to their operation.
Great. That's all the questions we have. I just want to wrap up with a couple of comments from Kara Briggs, who's on the chat here in case people haven't seen them, but she did confirm that the state fiscal year is through 2020 or 2030, sorry, for the tax credit program. So that's great news.
Thank you, Kara.
And they also offer a list of companies and entities that have an interest in purchasing awarded tax credits. So you can reach out to the SHPO directly for that. So that's great. I just want to say thank you, Chuck, for this great information. We appreciate you being here. I hope all of our attendees enjoyed it. And just a reminder, our next presentation starts in about 15 minutes. That'll be the behind the scenes at Mauchline residence. So we'll be using, closing out this webinar and starting it up again in about 15 minutes. But thank you again, Chuck. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Sorry for the delay in the start.
No problem. Thanks.
All right. Take care.
Thank you, Chuck.
All right. Thank you.